Hi everybody, welcome back to Ox Talks. It is October 23rd, 2023. Hope you all had a good weekend. I wanted to just quickly address a couple of articles that I saw on the state of the housing market and the rental market. I know we talk about the housing market, on a very, very regular basis. We're all getting bombarded with news stories every day about the housing market nightmare. But a couple things that I saw that I thought were important to bring to your attention. So do we have a slow-moving train wreck here, or do we have a fast evolving avalanche with regard to the housing market? I'll let you guys decide that. One off the Zero Hedge today just came through a few hours ago, says worse is to come. The home sales slide is far from over as Goldman sees sustained higher mortgage rates. It says existing home sales plunged back below the 4 million seasonally adjusted annual rate last month for the first time since foreclosure crisis in 2010. It says outside of the fallout from the great financial crisis, home sales are the lowest in 27 years. Goldman strategists expect mortgage rates to remain elevated for the foreseeable future, warning that these sustained higher rates will have the most pronounced impact in 2024 relative to the housing turnover. And lastly, it says Goldman therefore expects the lock-in effect, and we discussed what the lock-in effect is the other day, to push existing home sales even lower in the coming months and to limit any rebound next year. We expect home sales to decline to 3.8 million in 2024, the lowest level since the early 1990s, and it says, quote, the slide in home sales is far from over, says Nancy Vanden Houten, lead U.S. economist at Oxford Economics. Quote, keep in mind that recorded sales of previously owned homes are based on contracts signed a month or two earlier. Since those contract signings, mortgage rates are up another 0.5 percentage point, and it's doubtful that the squeeze on affordability from the higher rates has been offset by declining home prices. The next article is from the Insider, and it was yesterday. It says the average monthly mortgage on a new home is 52% higher than the average rent on an apartment. The average monthly mortgage on a new home is 52% higher than the average rent on an apartment as housing prices and interest rates continue to climb. This represents an all-time high since at least 1996, the Wall Street Journal reports, based upon data from the real estate firm CBRE. In the past, it says that you could usually find, the mortgage payment would be less or equal to that of a rent payment, not anymore. So again, just some information on the state of the housing market. It looks ugly and looks like it's going to keep getting uglier. Let's shift gears a bit. You hear often about people saying, well, you don't really ever own your home because as long as you have to pay property taxes on your home, if you fail to pay those property taxes, the tax assessor or the county can foreclose on the house for you not making those tax payments. And that's for the most part accurate. In California, I believe what the law is 5 years. If you fail to make your property tax payments for a period of 5 years, the house can be sold for payment to satisfy those non-payments. Let's look at the situation with homeowners associations, because there is an analogy to be drawn. If you own or are considering buying a house that is located in a homeowners association, you are going to be subject to what's called the CC&Rs. And that's the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And it's kind of like the set of rules and regulations that govern your community, your gated community. You need to be very, very aware of what is in these CC&Rs. If you are in the process of buying a home and you haven't yet closed the escrow, I would urge you to carefully review those CC&Rs, possibly even consider having a real estate attorney review those and be familiar with what is inside those CC&Rs. People don't understand how much power homeowners associations really do have. And what happens is you have monthly dues that you pay as part of the right and privilege, presumably, to live in that gated community. You presumably enjoy the benefits that the association is providing. Maybe it's some security. Usually it's maintenance of common areas. In some communities, they provide recreation facilities, basketball courts, tennis courts, pickleball courts, parks, things like that. So you're paying a monthly dues for the benefit of having those items taken care of inside the community. If you do not pay those dues on a timely manner, and if you become delinquent in payment of those association dues, the association can and usually does record an assessment lien against your property. Eventually, and depending on the association and how aggressive they are, eventually the CC&Rs always provide for this mechanism that the association can force the sale of your property to pay those unsatisfied dues. So again, just like real property taxes, as long as you're making those payments timely, it's fine. But as soon as you don't make those payments, and look, you could own that house free and clear. But if you're not paying your monthly association dues on time, it can become a real problem. It's very similar with regard to the association enforcing their rules and regulations when it comes to other items like your landscaping requirements at your property, what color paint you can have on your house, what improvements can you make to the exterior of your property, and even in your own backyard areas usually. And within those CC&Rs, you often have architectural guidelines of, you have to first seek and obtain the approval of the association before making modifications to your property. Again, every community is different. Some of them are more onerous than others, but most of them have a process by which you have to obtain consent to do these things. And if you don't obtain the consent, they can get their lawyers to send you a demand letter and force you to basically tear it out, go back and get the approval of the association, start over. You have to be very, very careful of that. Likewise, if, for example, they have certain policies regarding trash or regarding trimming of your trees, if you don't do those things, you'll get a nasty letter posted on your front door that says you have to take action to correct these issues immediately, or we could do it. We pay our contractors to do it, and then that becomes a further assessment that you have to pay. If you don't pay it, guess what? They circle back and they can do an assessment lien on your property, ultimately foreclose if you don't satisfy those things. So it's really important that you understand how far-reaching these CC&Rs are. It's probably a better situation if you're very, very well versed on the CC&Rs in a community before you buy into it, but take it seriously. I saw an article that came out today, and it says HOA 6 lawyers on homeowner over money-saving changes to their yard. It says the HOAs are given disproportionate amount of power. In this case, the homeowner wanted to change their landscaping to a more water restrictive environment or landscaping for more efficiency. They didn't obtain the approval of the association. The association got a lawyer involved, sent them a letter, and it said that the individual needed to remove their garden or they could face further action from the firm or the association. It says the letter said the violation of the foregoing restrictions is saving the homeowner money and time from the upkeep of a grass and lawn and serves several environmental benefits. It didn't matter in this case because evidently the homeowner did not first obtain the approval of the association. So they had their lawyers send them a letter and made them tear it out and redo it. So that's one situation where liens can arise on your property from either non-payment of the standard monthly fees or non-compliance with the HOA guidelines. I've seen this come up in my practice many times over the years. I get involved in HOA disputes with landowners, and the associations have a tremendous amount of power. What they do is they will have their lawyers take action, but usually the association CC&Rs provide that whatever legal fees the association expends on their attorneys will also be deemed an assessment against you and the property. So in essence, you are paying your counsel, you are down the road probably having to pay their counsel for any dispute that arises. So, I live in an association myself, and I often, tell my wife, I said, look, for example, we got a letter about a month ago saying that our tree was growing into our neighbor's tree. It looked to me that our neighbor's tree was very overgrown, but they determined in their discretion that our tree was the one growing into the neighbor's tree in the front yard, and we had to trim the tree. Or we were going to face further action from the architectural committee and the board, the HOA board. So we trimmed the tree. Last week, I pulled in late at night, and we had some cars in the driveway, and I didn't pull my car in the driveway evidently far enough. My rear part of my car was hanging over, I suppose, into the walkway, which was just the common curb walkway. Next morning I came out and I had a nastogram on my car saying I was in violation of some CC&R provision because my car was blocking the sidewalk, which if it was by a matter of inches. And it said, look, if there's a repeated failure to comply, it would result in fines. And of course, I know where that goes. Fines ultimately result in liens, and liens can, if you don't take care of them, can go down a nasty road. So some personal experience there. I just don't engage them. Again, once they start getting their lawyers involved to write letters to you, you pay your fees and you pay their fees. So keep that in mind. There are benefits to living in an association, but there are also some drawbacks. Years ago, I was involved in a particular litigation matter involving an association that I want to share with you. And it had to do with the owners of the property. They lived out of state. They lived in Chicago, and their son was renting the property from them, and he was living at the property. And he fell behind on payment of the HOA dues. Well, the HOA took it upon themselves to not notify the homeowner, which was the parents. They were sending notices to the property that the son was receiving, and he wasn't taking care of those. Ultimately, it became an assessment lien on the property, and in this case, we had an unscrupulous president of the HOA board who decided that he was going to finagle this property through a association foreclosure process and hopefully be able to pick up that property for his own portfolio. It went into foreclosure. Fortunately, however it happened, the owners did become aware of it before it went to a sale. I got involved. I filed a lawsuit to tie up the sale. We got an injunction, meaning a court order prohibiting the sale from going forward. We alleged all types of fraud, saying that, notices weren't properly given, they weren't sent to the proper location, and that the entire thing needed to be set aside and unwound. Ultimately, after fighting the matter in court for, it seemed like probably the better part of a year and a half or 2 years, ultimately it did get resolved, and it was understood that all of the foreclosure would be rescinded and the property would be deemed free and clear. And in that case, we were able to have the association pay, my client's legal fees for which was really a form of fraud in that case. But the point is, if you own a property, but you're renting it to somebody else within an association that is governed by CC&Rs, don't assume that the notices are going to be sent to you if, for example, your tenant's violating the CC&Rs. If your tenant is leaving trash around in the front, or your tenant is not keeping the landscaping up, and you are an absentee homeowner, there could be notices of violation being generated and fines being imposed that you're not being made aware of. Likewise, if it's going to a PO box, or if you're on vacation, something happens with the mail. It's really, really important you stay on top of these things, because ultimately, as the homeowner, you'll be responsible for those items, even if your tenants are not taking proper precaution and doing what they're supposed to do to pay those obligations, or to, I should say, to not create those violations in the first place. So everyone, be aware of associations. They are powerful entities. I've learned that over many years, litigating issues with associations. And it's in my opinion, they are disputes that you want to try to avoid if possible. I guess lastly, I'll address in closing, it's Monday. You all should be having a mindset this week of getting your exercise in, getting your 30 minutes of cardio in every day this week. Walk, do some of those push-ups, do some of those sit-ups. Again, every week you do a few, you're going to get better, you're going to get stronger, you're going to get fitter. You'll notice the difference. It will translate into a stronger mindset for you, a more powerful mindset. You'll be more productive. Keep the water intake up, so you don't get dehydrated. That's very important. And with that being said, I will see all of you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.